Hello, it is Adrienne Lawrence, and welcome into the conversation. I am in Sacramento right now, where it is 107 degrees today. It's absolutely crazy. You know, the growing impact right now of the climate emergency is very real. And fortunately, I have someone here to talk with us about it, and that's a senior reporter for The Guardian, Nina Lakhani. Thank you so much for joining us, Nina.
You're welcome. Hi.
All right, so it has been getting hotter and hotter, and it is very, very scary, as well as we're seeing these historic level floods coming through, as well as I just heard about a report in California about some kind of epic flood of Noah in the Ark kind of type proportions. There is just so much going on. Where should we begin?
I mean, we could literally begin everywhere, and I think that's the point, that, you know, extreme weather, caused by global heating is happening everywhere and anywhere. It's becoming increasingly unpredictable. That's the predictable part of it, from, deadly heat waves in Canada to the UK, where I'm from, to wildfires in England. I mean, we've never had a wildfire before, and now we've got, huge wildfires happening in England, to California, to flooding. I'm in Virginia right now, and there's been emergency, disasters called this last couple of days because of flooding in the mountains. So yeah, I mean, it's really stick a pin anywhere in the globe, and you're probably going to have some climate-related extreme weather events happening.
It is, and it's very, very bothersome, scary. The thing is that we're not necessarily made for this kind of heat. And also some of us are definitely behind when it comes to adapting to it, whether it's having air conditioning units, which I understand they are definitely struggling with when it comes to being across the pond and the heat that they're experiencing. Also, I know it must be hot in Phoenix. You had just covered that in a piece recently. What are people doing?
So Phoenix is interesting. So I've spent a month in Phoenix over June and July, and I chose to go there because Phoenix is America's hottest city. It's also its deadliest city from extreme heat. Over 2020 and 2021, just in Maricopa County, where Phoenix is located, more than 600 people died because of extreme heat. And this year, they're on track to beat that number, that inglorious record of death. So Phoenix is America's 5th largest city because of air conditioning. When air conditioning became available cheaply in the 1950s, that's when this desert city started to grow. But the expansion has been so the development has been unchecked, really. So just they've created this sprawling heat island, and so while most people have air conditioning in Phoenix, not every, there is a significant minority that don't, and actually a significant minority that can't afford to run their air conditioning, right? Or if the air conditioning breaks, they can't afford to fix it. I mean, also just, that is a city like many cities in the West that is experiencing exponential growth when it comes to the homeless population, when it comes to substance misuse, which are huge sort of, risk factors, increase your risk by 200 or 300 fold of dying from extreme heat. So there's, it's also the city with the highest inflation in the country at more than 12% in June. So you have this sort of convergence of factors, which are all surrounded by the climate crisis. I mean, this is a place that is getting hotter, breaking records every year. And I think really significant, as well as these sort of daytime highs of 115, 116 that the city sees, it's the nighttime temperatures. And you're probably feeling this yourself where you are, but now I was there for a period in June where for more than 2 weeks, the temperature did not drop below 90 at night, right? For our bodies to start recovering, it has to drop to below 80 because heat is cumulative, right? And so that sort of, your body never really has a chance to recover. So I think the eye-catching temperatures in places like Phoenix, but all over the country, are these sort of daytime highs, which are obviously incredibly dangerous and worrisome. But it's these nighttime lows that are really worth keeping an eye on as well. And, somewhere like Phoenix, the nighttime temperatures have increased at twice the speed as the daytime temperatures. That's over 30 years of data. So you have, and that's just one example, right? And like I said, Phoenix is a place where most people do have air conditioning, yet the death toll is growing every year. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, 650 people in 2 years dying of extreme heat. In America, the richest country in the world. We can only just, all the people, you can imagine when India and Pakistan had these crazy springtime heat waves this year. I mean, how many excess deaths are they likely to have? I mean, we've no idea. But yeah, it's really, really scary.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely terrifying. And that just seemed to be one big ad for don't go to Phoenix. But the reality is the heat is going everywhere. We still can't avoid it. And it's also very scary, this thought that even at night, when you would expect things to calm down and for it to cool down,
yeah,
not happening, even in an area that I would think is more desert friendly, like Arizona, where you would expect it to be cooler at night.
Well, this is, a significant part of that, the issue there is this urban heat island effect, which we know has occurred in cities across the US and really does impact Black and brown communities far more because of racist housing policies and environmental justice sort of policies over the years. But because you have so much concrete and asphalt, basically, the heat that retains the heat during the day, and then it just lets it out very slowly at night. When you cut down vegetation, that's what you get. And you replace it with concrete, that's what happens, right? And so one of the interesting things they're doing in Phoenix is they do have the world's first ever extreme heat team. And one of their sort of long-term sort of goals and plans to try and cool the whole city down is to increase the canopy cover, which has just been destroyed over the last 50, 60 years.
Well, I'm glad that they have some plan in mind because it sounds like people are, they're being impacted to the point of death. I know you had noted in your article that so far this year, 1,215 emergency calls have been designated by dispatch as heat related there. And I'm wondering, since again, heat, it seems to be rising everywhere in terms of numbers, is there any kind of approach that a lot of communities are turning to, regardless of maybe the resources and funds they have? You mentioned what they're doing in Phoenix by trying to replace the canopy there, and I'm guessing creating more shade. What are you hearing about the other approaches other cities are taking?
Yeah, I mean, I think Phoenix is actually a lot, further forward than other cities, because it's been so hot for so long. I think it's really difficult, if you've got, last year, the hottest place in the world at one point was British Columbia in Canada, right? How do you plan for that? How, they had this crazy heat dome and hundreds of people died in the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. I mean, it's very hard to plan for that in a region where very rarely does it even get to 90, right? How do you plan for these sort of 100 plus sort of temperatures? I think there is a real lack of data, and I think there is an effort by the Department of Health and the CDC to improve recording and monitoring of data and in real time. There's quite a lot of work going into that since, under the Biden administration, so that actually health, like ERs and sort of doctors and nurses and emergency services know very quickly what's happening. Last week, when it got to this temperature, you had this rise in calls. It will, informing people will make people more aware, I think. I think some of the sort of provisions in the new climate bill, which Biden signed today, in the long term will help. There is money there for residents, especially low-income households, to get rebates and some credits on sort of more energy efficient appliances and things like heat pumps for cooling and as well as for heating. So I think that can help. But I think really just we've got to stop the temperature getting hotter. I mean, at the moment it's going completely the wrong direction, right? And so we have to stop the temperature rising. And then and I think in some places where there isn't really hot temperatures all of the time, I think cities will start to look at sort of like emergency resilience hubs like community centers, places like that. So when there's a power outage, for example, like we saw in Texas with the big freeze last year, which Texas was also very close to seeing rolling blackouts this year because of heat. Places that people can go when power gets cut, that have generators or that are solar powered or have a mix of sort of energy sources. So people do have places to go and cool down, because heat deaths are 100% avoidable. These are preventable deaths, right? But I think it's getting hotter far faster when cities are getting prepared, and so hopefully this new sort of legislation, this new money will go to building some resilience in some of the worst affected communities.
Indeed, hopefully that is the case, because as we are going to see, that it's a lot of marginalized groups, individuals who can't necessarily afford particular means, who can't necessarily shelter themselves or have access to AC, or also being able to pay the bills when the when the electricity goes up because you're running the air conditioning for so long. It's a really scary thing, and the reality is that we need to push back against climate change and we need to confront it. And so definitely hoping that this new act that Biden signed helps start the process. Thank you so much for joining us, Nina, and also for being such an insightful guest. Can you please tell the viewers where they can read more of your work and find out more about you?
Sure. So I write for The Guardian. You can just look me up on the Guardian page and you'll see all my reporting. And also I'm at Nina Lakhani on Twitter, where I post all my articles.
Fantastic. That's Nina Lakhani, senior reporter, climate justice for The Guardian. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Yeah.
Welcome back to the conversation. It is Adrienne Lawrence, and I know that on Tuesday there were a few primaries going on, and there are a lot of things to do and prepare for when it comes to the midterms. And fortunately, I have the AAPI Victory Alliance Executive Director, Varun Nakoor, joining us today to explain the work the Democrats have cut out for them. Thanks for joining us, Varun.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, so much chatter, so much to do. Biden passed the historic act, or at least he signed it, and it seems that the Dems are looking pretty good, but they have their work cut out for them. Where would you start?
Well, better late than never. We got it passed in the nick of time. We are in the dog days of August, and you're absolutely right. We have two primaries today that we're keeping our eye out on, specifically because, right, we've seen what happened in Kansas 2 weeks ago with the historic turnout of progressives and women and folks of all stripes that really kind of shocked the system in terms of beating back on restrictions on Roe versus Wade, abortion rights, abortion health care. So that is a good bellwether. And then a week later, we saw some special elections that also gave us some positive indications of how November could end up unfolding from the perspective of electoral sort of tailwinds. And tonight might be further indications of what we might see. And what we are looking for specifically tonight are Democrats overperforming. There's a special election in Alaska. God help us if Sarah Palin wins that special election. We do not need her on the national landscape. And then, of course, we're all dreading, of course, what might happen to our favorite Republican, Mary Cheney in Wyoming. So a lot to uncover for tonight, and maybe see how well November may shape up for us on the left.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, the prospect of Palin being involved in the federal arena. As she chose before, trying to go for the vice president, and I actually would argue that that's what she's also vying for here to some extent in terms of riding on Trump's coattails. But I'm sure she'd have to fight Marjorie Taylor Greene for that spot, and I'm sure that would be entertaining. But in terms of all the entertainment that is going on, when it comes to things the Dems have lined up for them that a lot of people are still waiting resolution on? For example, student loans. Kind of where do things stand with the Dems and what they plan to do to win over those of us who aren't there yet?
That's a great question. I would say that, there are not the investments that we needed in the climate, right? I think that makes a lot of core progressives happy. But you're right, we didn't get the wins that we had wanted. I would say that we very much got behind the curve, if you will, on the expectations game. And politics is frankly a lot about expectations. I think we overpromised a lot to our side after Biden got elected and after we had won the Senate. And it's still, I think, kind of creating some challenges for us as to how we message to our own side about what we can realistically get done in such a partisan environment, such a divided Congress. But that being said, I have not seen much on student loans. I've heard a lot of maneuvering apparently going on. I don't think they've settled on anything, frankly. And at the end of the day, right, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, at least for the next several months, are going to be deciding for all Democrats whether something like this gets passed or not. Not optimistic at this stage, but at least in terms of the overall Senate makeup, I mean, we have some doozies, if you will, of Senate races coming up with just really crazy folks, Dr. Oz and many others who are running, not doing a very good job, and things are looking okay for us. I will feel a little bit more optimistic if the current polling on the Senate maps around the country hold after Labor Day. Typically, that's when I think a lot of folks like me look at and see if trends are solidifying, if they're continuing, are they reverting, that sort of thing.
Yes, and it should be very interesting to watch. And I know that in your work, you specializing in uplifting the voices and addressing the issues that concern the AAPI community, that's Asian American Pacific Islander. And so in terms of the demographic really being reached, it seems that candidates aren't necessarily getting involved or reaching out.
I don't think they're doing as good of a job as they frankly did even in 2020, right? And how do we know that, right? I think one of the main ways we know that is where our investments occurring. And we don't see much. I mean, I think in some measure, the DCCC, the campaign arm that's trying to maintain the House of Representatives on the Democratic side, they announced this 7-figure AAPI media plan, right? So we know it's $1 million. And I sort of scratch my head thinking, you're spending $1 million trying to reach 23 million APIs in this country. That's maybe 25 cents a person. It's pennies on where it needs to be. Please add another zero at the end of that, because that, I think, barely even gets us into the ballpark, 10 million, right? And so we know that they're not making the investments that they need to, and yet our people are still feeling somewhat motivated, right? We have the threat of Donald Trump, sort of staring at us still, unfortunately. We have the exacerbated rhetoric from the right against not only our community, but all people of color that is still ratcheting up the hate and violence, geared towards our community and many others. So we have not seen sort of a downtick, frankly, in the hate and violence. It's still happening, and it's going to continue as long as we've got these ultra right-wing, MAGA-loving, folks on the right who they themselves, they realize that they know they're doing this, and yet it's not stopped them in the least. So we have to do a lot more. We have to invest a lot more into our community. We have to get more progressives elected to be the front lines, and frankly, send a signal to the right that not only won't this be tolerated, but there's going to be consequences if you continue to spew out this hate, which will lead to the further violence even.
Yeah, Without a doubt. And that's something that I would like to think more people would fully appreciate, particularly hopefully coming out of this pandemic, where we saw the numbers and attacks against Asian Americans, particularly East Asians here. And it just seems to be something that is rising. And so not to necessarily engage a demographic that has been on the receiving end of considerable hate just seems like a lost opportunity to ensure that you can meet people's needs. And it seems like candidates, as I think you've noted at some point, they really have to engage people, Asian Americans, beyond crime and education.
You're absolutely right, and I want to maybe hone in on guns and how the right, and specifically the NRA and also the NSSF, the National NSSF is the lobby for the gun industry in this country, right? And so what they have done is extremely vile, because they know themselves that there is a lot of fear in AAPI communities all around the country. They are actively marketing the selling of guns to our community like they've never done before. So just think about the vileness of this, right? So the right spews this hate, and this vicious rhetoric. We get afraid because their spewing of hate is leading to acts of violence against our community. Our community then reacts by purchasing guns because we're being directly marketed to, thinking that somehow guns are making them safer, when in fact, all the stats show that it really doesn't. Suicide rates grow exponentially when there's a gun in the household. We doubt very much, for example, that training is occurring on the purchase of these guns. And so we've now seen record levels of gun purchases from the AAPI community, which is then going to lead to a whole host of unfortunate acts of accidental death, and suicide. And so this is just, we need to kind of stop this cycle and call it out for what it is. And this is the profiting off of hate in our country. And we're not the only community facing this right now, but it absolutely has to be called out in every way, shape, and form, because we've got to put a stop to this.
Absolutely, and the fear mongering, and you're absolutely right about kind of this upshot of having people invest in these guns, and then it creates even more significant problems from there. And it all kind of stemmed from these fears that have been created and stoked by, as far as I'm concerned, the right. And it's a very scary thing. And I'd like to think that there are some representatives out there who are investing in change and addressing these issues. Would you say that anyone out there on the left is doing a pretty good job?
In terms of gun violence prevention awareness?
In terms of addressing the needs of the AAPI community?
I feel like we're on an island of our own, unfortunately. And I think in large measure, most AAPI groups are still very underfunded. We've come, we're newer on the scene, frankly, politically, right? We didn't really participate. We didn't really vote much until like Donald Trump got elected. And then I think we started to get more engaged civically all around the country. But even though there are now more organizations around the country than ever before, you would think that we would see exponential investment, especially considering the fact that our community came out to vote in record numbers, something I spoke about on your program a while back, which is we came out in record numbers in 2020. There was a 47% increase in voting between 16 and 20, right? This has never happened before in the history of our country where any one demographic has increased their vote share. And so we need to see commensurate investments in our communities. Unfortunately, it's not there yet. But all we can do is try to preach and hopefully we'll be able to turn this tide around.
Absolutely. I want to thank you so much for joining us. That's Varun Nakour, AAPI Victory Alliance Executive Director.
Thank you so much.
Do all of you know the Young Turks? an outlet like yourself that are willing to cover this story from the very beginning.
You have the Young Turks and a bunch of other progressive forces saying this is the time to fight for our values.
And I think right now there are a lot of progressive voters, many leftists who feel like they don't have a home.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
What we've done is sustainable, slow, healthy growth. And I think that's the way news should be, where you don't rely on sensationalist stuff. You don't lean on whatever's trendy in the news at any given moment. You know, you just go with the truth.
You gave me a platform.
You've uplifted so many other progressive voices through this network, and you're constantly looking for people that you can amplify through the work we do, through the infrastructure that you built at TYT.
It takes those early people who believe that can really be the seeds of this movement, and that has been the Young Turks.
We're super serious about the news. We also managed to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We're not TYT, you're TYT.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? The white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it though.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you or that you were
that it was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
you're ready for the spicy takes, but whether you're ready or not, if you're watching, you are gonna get them. Welcome to TYT, I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have a bonanza ahead for you today. In the first hour, we'll talk about a lot of different stories that will probably be rage-inducing, including some of the positive commentary that I'm seeing from Democrats toward Liz Cheney for once in her life doing one thing correctly. But should we really be giving her cookies? I would argue no, and I'll make that argument at the top of the show. Later, we'll also talk about a story involving a rookie police officer who was gunned down in a botched robbery here in California. You might be wondering, why do we care about this local story? Well, it has broader ramifications that I want to discuss. And then in the second hour, Wosny Lambre joins me. We are not having an ice cream party Wednesday. John Iadarola is out, he is off, hopefully enjoying some much deserved time off. But Wosny Lambre is fantastic, and we're gonna have great discussions, including some discussions where we will be continuing this dunking sesh that we've been having against Mehmet Oz. He just continues embarrassing himself, and I absolutely love it. We'll also talk about Texas banning books like Anne Frank's diary, which, to be quite honest with you, was a pivotal book for me to read when I was in elementary school, because it helped me understand the severity of what happened during the Holocaust. As an elementary school kid, learning about something that difficult through Anne Frank's work. We'll talk about that a little later. But before we get to any of that stuff, it's really, really important for you guys to like and share the stream if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're not watching us on YouTube, no worries. There are other ways that you can support the show and get the message out there, including becoming a member. You'll get all sorts of exclusive members only content. Other perks come along with it. Go to tyt.com/join or click on that join button if you're watching us on YouTube, and just move about the motions. You'll know exactly what to do and how to join. And as always, I really, really appreciate the support. Now, without further ado, let's get to our first story.
2 years ago, I won this primary with 73% of the vote. I could easily have done the same again. The path was clear. But it would have required that I go along with President Trump's lie about the 2020 election. It would have required that I enable his ongoing efforts to unravel our democratic system and attack the foundations of our republic. That was a path I could not and would not take.
You just heard the concession speech from Wyoming Representative Liz Cheney, who is one of very few Republican lawmakers who's been willing to hold Trump accountable for what he did in inciting violence on January 6th, for what he did in continuing this narrative about the election being stolen from him, when in reality there hasn't been a single shred of evidence indicating widespread voter fraud. And Liz Cheney knew that she was taking a risk by holding Trump accountable, and that risk came to fruition with her essentially losing this primary in her state of Wyoming. Now, as a result, her term will expire on January 3rd of next year. And I want to give you some more details about what this all means electorally before ripping Cheney to shreds, because she does deserve it. Doing one good thing doesn't erase a record of terrible, terrible policies, warmongering, support for war crimes. We'll get to all of that in just a moment. But what were the results of this election? Well, with the Republican Party clearly serving Trump, even when he's not in power, her decision again to hold him accountable hurt her considerably. Harriet Hageman, a lawyer with Trump's endorsement, ousted Cheney on Tuesday, clinching the GOP nomination for deep red Wyoming's only House seat. Cheney fell in defeat despite her appeals to Democrats and independents to re-register as Republicans and vote for her. In fact, her opponent had about 66% to Cheney's nearly 29%. And that's insane, because the last time she ran for re-election, she won easily with upward of 70% of the vote in her favor. And it's because she's deeply conservative. Liz Cheney has always been deeply conservative. And despite what she thinks about Donald Trump today, fact of the matter is she voted along with his agenda 90% of the time. So let's not forget about that. Now, her opponent used to support Cheney. Okay, this is Hagman. Used to support Cheney, and in 2016, she even opposed Donald Trump, calling him, get a load of this, racist and xenophobic. But she has since come to embrace Trump when she realized that it could actually serve her own personal interests, of course. That's my addition. And basically claimed that the 2020 election was rigged against him, as many successful Republican candidates around the country have claimed. Now, do they claim that because they genuinely think that Biden rigged the election? Or do they say it because they don't have the balls to tell the truth about what really happened? They don't have the balls to stand up to Donald Trump. And more importantly, aside from being massive cowards, these are individuals who are just interested in protecting their own political careers, and they're willing to sell out the American people to do just that. Now, what's even more scary, if you take a broader look at what's happening with these congressional elections, some gubernatorial elections as well, in battleground states, candidates who deny the legitimacy of the 2020 vote have won GOP nominations this year for nearly 2/3 of state and federal offices with power over elections. So there is a scary component to this, because with the help of this right-wing media ecosystem, you have Republican voters who have been convinced, absolutely convinced, that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. They live in an alternate reality, and it's, of course, partly because they live in a certain filter, media filter bubble, where they're hearing lies over and over and over again. Now, Trump's impact was felt in some of these other primary races last night. For instance, moderate, as she's being described, Lisa Murkowski faced a Trump-backed GOP challenger, Kelly Tshibaka, and both advanced from an all-party primary to the general election. Former Governor Sarah Palin, I can't believe she's still around, an anti-establishment Republican backed by Trump, advanced in the all-party primary to November's election in Alaska's lone congressional district. Now, there are reports that Liz Cheney is considering what the future holds for her political career, and she was asked point blank during an interview on the Today Show whether she might consider higher office. Let's watch.
You said this fight is just beginning. You've even launched a political organization already. So let's just be straight about it. Are you considering running for president yourself?
Well, what I'm going to do, Savannah, is spend the next several months completing my work in Congress, obviously completing my work representing the people of Wyoming. We have a tremendous amount of work left to do on the January 6th committee.
She didn't deny that she's considering it. Clearly, it's something that she's thinking about. And while I'm uncertain as to how serious she is in considering a presidential run in 2024, anyone in the Democratic Party, any Democratic voter who thinks, no, I mean, everything Liz Cheney has done in the past is great, she should totally run. It really depends. How would she run? Would she run as a Republican or would she run as a Democrat? And I think that's a legitimate question to ask, because ever since the Trump era came to fruition, what we've noticed is that the so-called never Trump Republicans, many of whom were supportive of the Bush administration, have now traveled over to the Democratic Party. And I don't want them. I don't want them at all. I don't want the Democratic Party to be essentially become realigned to represent the garbage that we experienced during the Bush years. And Liz Cheney, along with her father, of course, Dick Cheney, it's very representative of the neoconservatives that destroyed this country during Bush's 8 years in office. And I think it's really, really important to remember that. Now, that's the reason why I have problems with Cheney. But the Republican voters in Wyoming, they were asked, what do you think about her potentially running for president in 2024? Let's take a listen to what they had to say.
I don't think I would support her in a presidential run.
No, please, no.
No. I wouldn't support her as a dog catcher.
I still think that Trump did a lot for Wyoming and that we've actually been hurt by our new president. So
I'm not a Cheney fan.
No, I think she should just go back to Virginia and get another job. She's redoing her resume today.
Now, those interviews serve as anecdotal evidence for the disdain that Republican voters in her own state have toward her. But I would argue that the fact that she very easily lost the primary race is pretty indicative of how Republicans feel about her brand of republicanism, which is republicanism that includes all of the policy proposals, all of the ideas that we absolutely hate. But she's willing to tweak the party a little bit by being critical of Donald Trump. Not good enough. Not someone that I want to see as a leader. I will say she's done a good job with the January 6th hearings. She's thorough, she's persuasive, but I'm uncertain as to whether or not she's swayed anyone who was more aligned with Donald Trump's BS about the election being stolen. I think to some extent she's preaching to the choir on that issue. But I do want to talk a little bit about what it would mean if she ran, right? So if she runs as a Republican, I think it might actually be a good thing. Who knows if she would split the vote enough for it to make a difference? But running as a Republican, have at it. It has no impact on me. It has no impact on, where the Democratic Party moves to. So that's fine. But it would be kind of dumb to run as a Republican, wouldn't it? Considering that Trump is the leader of the Republican Party, and the voters seem to really love him. Following the FBI raid, his polling actually increased, and he widened his lead against Ron DeSantis to the tune of 10 points. Ron DeSantis was closing in on him, and then after the raid, his supporters became much more galvanized. So the idea of Liz Cheney running as a Republican for president in 2024 seems like, honestly, a dumb idea for her. But if she did it, I wouldn't care one way or the other because it really doesn't have an impact on us, right? Now, would she run as a Democrat? I don't think so. But whether she does or doesn't, I think this brings us to a much more important issue that I think needs to be addressed. I've seen other progressive shows and writers address this as well, but I just really want to double down on it. Liz Cheney is not our hero. Liz Cheney is bad, very bad, okay? She didn't really seem to have a problem with Trump for the majority of his term. It wasn't until Trump tried to essentially overturn the results of the presidential election where she realized, nah, maybe I shouldn't continue enabling this clown. And she suffered the political consequences for that, to be sure. But nonetheless, let's remember who Liz Cheney is, okay? Cheney has built a staunchly conservative voting record over nearly 6 years in Congress. When Trump was in office, she voted with him more than 90% of the time. Her family is Republican royalty in Wyoming, although I'm a little unsure if that's really still the case. To remind you of a few other things, she promoted regime change in Iran. She also, in 2009, founded, along with Bill Kristol, another war hawk, something known as Keep America Safe. It's an organization concerned with national security issues, or at least it's an organization that pretends to be concerned about national security issues in order to fearmonger to Americans and manufacture consent for more war in countries that we really shouldn't be meddling in. And why does she do it? Could have something to do with the fact that she's looking out for her defense contractor friends, campaign contributors. I mean, you guys know the drill. You know how this all works. Again, the Bush era was a disaster. Let's not forget about it. I'm still old enough to remember warrantless wiretapping. I'm still able to remember the torture, which they used euphemisms for, like enhanced interrogation, waterboarding people. I still remember what happened at Abu Ghraib, where US members of the military were humiliating, torturing, and photographing some of the prisoners that they had at that facility. Cheney's also, as I've mentioned, a neoconservative. Her focus has always been on hawkish foreign policy, support for the military, which is fine. But when they say support for the military, they're not talking about the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend the country. They pretend like they care about those individuals, but let me remind you, their starting pay is so abysmal that it would make minimum wage workers in this country, feel like they might be the lucky ones. They're making less than $20,000 a year starting pay to be a member of the military. No, when she talks about supporting the military, she talks about supporting the industries that have to do with military operations. Again, these private defense contractors that make a killing off of people pushing for more defense spending and more war, people like Cheney. She's also very pro-business and is a so-called social conservative. What does social conservative mean? Social conservative just means we don't want any social safety net. We don't want any social spending. We want tax cuts for the rich. Again, a representative of everything progressives are supposed to despise. But the establishment Democratic Party is willing to open their arms to her because, to be quite honest, they're more interested in being inviting toward Bush-era Republicans as opposed to leftists or progressives. It's amazing how complimentary they've been toward Cheney, especially over the last year. And finally, let me allow John Nichols to have the last word on Liz Cheney. He had an interview with Democracy Now! Today. Here's what he had to say about it.
Liz Cheney is every bit as right-wing as Donald Trump, perhaps even a little more right-wing than him on some issues. And so people should be very cautious about imagining that she would seek office in the future as some sort of moderate Republican or something like that. That's not who she is. She has been good on standing up to Trump on these democracy issues, but the bottom line is she is an extreme right-wing conservative.
Damn right, she is. There is no way in hell anyone should be referring to her as a moderate Republican. Policy-wise, she's not a moderate Republican. And just like Mike Pence, she did the bare minimum, which is stand up to protect our democratic process. That's not some heroic thing to do. That is, again, the bare minimum. And I feel like voters in this country are constantly being conditioned to have insanely low expectations of our politicians, including politicians in the party we just support, and even politicians in the party we don't support. Certainly the case with Liz Cheney. We need to have higher standards. And just because we might share an enemy with Liz Cheney doesn't mean that she would be a good representative for the American people, doesn't mean that she would be a good leader. In fact, everything that we are feeling pain from today, policy-wise, she has supported and she would double down on if she had the chance to do it. That's who Liz Cheney is. So sure, kudos for standing up to Donald Trump, knowing that it's gonna cost you a congressional seat, but she knows she's gonna be just fine. That revolving door keeps revolving. It's not like she's gonna be jobless. She'll be okay. In the meantime, let's not be stupid and pretend like she's America's hero for doing the bare minimum. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, we've got more news you can use, including Trump getting rejected by lawyers. They don't wanna represent him. Can you blame them? So we'll do a little dunking sesh and then we'll continue. We'll be right back. Ice cream. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our first social break of the day. And since I've been so bad with giving you guys updates on programming and live reads, I'm just gonna do that today, okay, off the bat. So let's start off with some exciting news. Nina Turner is hosting a new show at TYT Network. known as Unbossed. Unbossed with Nina Turner, and it starts on October 17th. It's a new daily show, and you know it's gonna be fantastic because Nina Turner doesn't hold back. And I love strong and salty women. Let's just keep it real. And that's who she is. So tyt.com/unbossedtyt to subscribe. And again, it's a daily show starting October 17th. Don't miss it. Also, I don't know if you guys know this, you should at this point, but in case you don't, you should be checking out JR Jackson's show as well. It's known as The Watch List. And you can check that out at youtube.com/watchlisttyt. youtube.com/watchlisttyt. It airs on weekdays, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific. You could check it out live, or you could just subscribe to that channel, that YouTube channel, and you can watch videos on demand, or VODs, as the cool tech people say. Also, if you're wondering, look, I don't like banking at Bank of America or Chase or any of these big banks. Luckily, we have a financial institution that you can park your money in, and they actually have some pretty decent values. So Aspiration is wonderful. Go to aspiration.com/tyt, open an account and make an impact and decrease your carbon footprint. Then keep track of your progress using the Aspiration app. They're very much concerned about the environment, and they want to use their financial institution to do something in response to climate change. They want to do their part, and I think it's great to deposit your money in places that actually give a crap about the world around us. So aspiration.com/tyt. Finally, Shop TYT. Exciting things are happening. Let's just keep it real, okay? There's a new design that's been released by Shop TYT, and it's been inspired by a TYT fan, which I absolutely love. This is a woman who actually got a tattoo of something I say in that viral video of mine. I don't care what the Bible says, in response to the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. So you can check out that new design at shoptyt.com. All right, fun stuff. We've got 47 seconds, so I'm gonna read a few member comments, starting with Jonathan, who says, "Are you going to trade ice cream for crudité in the bonus episode?" Would I trade ice cream for vegetables? No, I will not be doing that. Not interested. Mickey C, the silver hair dragon. I just responded to a Facebook post praising Liz Cheney. I reminded him that she's a warmonger, anti-abortion, voted against the Voting Rights Act and dozens of other bills that would benefit the people. Yes, praise her for doing the right thing with the January 6th committee. Other than that, she's a true red Republican. Mickey C, you get it. We see each other. All right, let's get back to the show. What's up, party people? Welcome back to TYT. We've got a lot more news to get to, and maybe we need a little bit of a break from some of the devastation in the country. So let's make fun of Trump, because there's definitely something worth making fun of here. Poor Donald Trump. He's trying and failing to find legal representation to defend him in this ongoing investigation regarding the top secret and classified documents that he potentially illegally took home with him to Mar-a-Lago. Now, when you take a look at Donald Trump's history with refusing to pay his lawyers, or his history of throwing people under the bus after they go through great lengths and bend over backwards to help him, you'll understand why lawyers might not be as willing to represent him in any case. But when it comes to something as big as treason charges or potential treason charges, you can understand why maybe representing Trump is not in anyone's best interest. But here's what we know based on a report from the Washington Post. Everyone is saying no, said a prominent Republican lawyer who, like some others, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss confidential conversations. Longtime confidants and advisors of Trump have grown extremely worried about Trump's current stable of lawyers, noting that most of them have little to no experience in cases of this type. So his legal team consists of pretty inexperienced lawyers. And I think that's reflected in the way that some of these investigations are going. You've got lawyers who have never dealt with any government related lawsuits or criminal investigations. You have lawyers who have tiny little firms and have focused primarily on like real estate law. It's just not looking good for Trump. And look, to be sure, everyone deserves lawyers who will defend them, but no lawyer is forced to defend him. And that's where he runs into a problem here. Now, John Sale, who's a prominent Florida defense attorney who worked on the Watergate prosecution team, said that he turned down representing Trump last week. In fact, he's one of the few lawyers who was, who received a call from Trump, and it was, I guess, courageous enough to talk about it on the record. He said this: you have to evaluate whether you want to take it. It's not like a DUI. It's representing the former president of the United States and maybe the next one in what's one of the highest visibility cases ever. So I think what Sale said there was, he was being careful. Let's be careful. But I could also read between the lines. And when a lawyer is willing to sign on to an investigation or a case involving Donald Trump, they run the risk of, again, Trump throwing them under the bus. They run the risk of eventually becoming part of the investigation, as is the case, by the way, with the lawyer who lied to the DOJ about Trump having those classified documents in the first place. That lawyer might be in a lot of trouble. But nonetheless, here's what else we know. In another potential complication, any lawyer who made assurances to the FBI on Trump's behalf, again, could end up in a lot of trouble, because don't lie on behalf of Trump. Trump's search is also being hampered by his divisiveness, as well as his reputation for refusing to pay vendors and contractors who have worked for him. So let's talk about that a little bit. One lawyer told a story from early in Trump's presidency of his legal team urging him against tweeting about the Mueller probe, only to find he tweeted about it before they got to the end of the West Wing driveway. Several people said Trump was nearly impossible to represent and that it would be unclear if they would ever get paid. I've been in situations where family members ask me to take care of their kid for a day, right? And I don't have kids of my own, don't want kids of my own, but I've got that, that itch sometimes. I like kids, I like to be around them, I like to take care of them and help my family members out when I can. Children, literal 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, are better at following instructions than the former president of the United States. And so, yeah, any lawyer who would consider representing him, knowing full well that he will not take your legal advice, is crazy, absolutely crazy. And I knew that this day would come when lawyers would realize, not worth it. It almost never works out for Trump's lawyers. His former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, also weighed in on this, saying, in the olden days, he would tell firms representing him was a benefit because they could advertise off of it. Okay, let's just stop for 1 second. This statement from Michael Cohen triggered me a little bit, not because I'm mad at Michael Cohen, but because it reminds me of all the times people request free work from you because you don't need the money, you need the exposure. Now, it really depends on where you work. If you work in media, it happens all the time. No, do it. Please spend your entire day working for free because you get exposure. It's just theft, really. It's stealing people's time and energy. Michael Cohen continues to say, today is not the same. He's also a very difficult client in that he's always pushing the envelope. He rarely listens to sound legal advice. And he wants you to do things that are not appropriate, ethically or legally. And Michael Cohen should know he served time in prison because he was Trump's former personal attorney who did unethical and illegal things on Trump's behalf. Not smart, very dumb. So I love this story because far too often we come across people in positions of power who are treated as if they are above the law, or they just never suffer the same consequences that ordinary people would suffer. Normal people don't get a 2-month warning to hand over the documents or else you'll get raided. Please turn over the document. We know you have the documents, turn them over, Mr. Trump, or else we're gonna have to do a raid. And Trump's like, tells his lawyer to tell the DOJ, we ain't got no documents. They gave Trump 2 months to comply. A subpoena to turn over the classified documents. He wouldn't do it. And the day the raid happened, it wasn't a no-knock raid. It wasn't a surprise. His lawyers were fully aware that the raid was gonna happen. So, I mean, I think everyone deserves a fair investigation, even people I despise. I believe in fairness. I believe that everyone should have the ability to defend themselves. So on one hand, it's kind of scary to not find a single lawyer, a decent lawyer who's willing to represent you. At the same time, I believe this is called when the chickens come home to roost. If you don't pay people, they're not gonna wanna work for you. If you continuously throw people under the bus, they're not gonna wanna be allies to you. And that's where Trump is today. And sorry if I find a little bit of enjoyment reading about that. All right, well, let's move on to some other news. A story from California that I think it's upsetting because this isn't an isolated case. There have been several high-profile stories like this where some of the details are different, but the overall theme is similar. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention. 3 suspects have been arrested for their alleged role in a botched robbery where a Monterey Park, California police officer was shot and killed. That was the result of this botched robbery. So 26-year-old Gardiel Solario was the officer who was shot and killed. He had only been on the police force for 1 month. He was a rookie cop. And when he was outside of an LA Fitness gym waiting in his vehicle, he was approached by one of the suspects who then proceeded to attempt to rob him. The situation fell apart, and in the end, again, this 26-year-old police officer, rookie cop, was shot and killed. Now, the Los Angeles District Attorney, George Gascon, did a press conference where he addressed the severity of the incident. So let's take a quick look at that.
The defendant got out of a car nearby, approached Officer Solorio with a gun drawn in what appeared to be an attempted robbery. Officer Solorio was in his vehicle. Officer Solorio attempted to flee by backing out of his vehicle when the suspect fired multiple times. The defendant then returned back to the vehicle where a juvenile was behind the wheel, and they fled the scene. Today, we'll file 1 count of murder with special circumstances allegations that the murder occurred during the commission of a robbery against Carlos Del Cid.
Carlos Del Cid is the name of the individual who ended up shooting the weapon or firing the weapon and shooting and killing the cop. It's interesting that in that press conference, Gascon mentioned the enhancements that will be added to the charges here because he is not a fan of enhancements, including gun enhancements. So for instance, if someone has committed a crime and while committing that crime, they were in possession of an illegal gun, Gascon does not like to add additional charges related to the illegal gun, which I think is very strange in a state that purports to care so much about gun control. So when you have an opportunity to penalize or prosecute someone who is in possession of an illegal gun, you should maybe take that opportunity, just saying for a second. Now let's get into the details about who Carlos Del Cid is. Carlos Del Cid is, again, just one of the suspects here. There were 2 others who were arrested, one of whom was a 17-year-old who drove the getaway vehicle. Since he's underage, we don't know too many details about him. Those records are sealed. So here's a photo of him, his mugshot, and there are many mugshots of Carlos Del Cid because he has a lengthy criminal record and was not supposed to be roaming the streets considering his violent criminal record. What do I mean by that? Let's get into the details. Court records show Del Cid was arrested in February of this year. After pleading no contest to 2 felony charges, he was sentenced to 180 days in jail and 4 years formal probation on March 10th. The 20-year-old was actually released the next day for what jail records describe as a short sentence. All right. George Gascon was asked about this, like, what's up with this short sentence? Why didn't your prosecutors, ensure that this guy who committed violent crimes didn't get released the next day after his sentencing? And here's what he had to say. Any questions concerning the actual length of time spent in custody should be directed to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. All right, well, look, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department is very problematic. There is evidence of literal gang activity within that department. So when Gascon says maybe you should look at the sheriff's department, I'm actually sympathetic to that. So the sheriff's department actually did respond to the press when they asked questions. The Los Angeles County District's attorney dropped 3 of the 5 felony charges. On March 10th of 2022, suspect Del Cid was sentenced to 4 years of formal probation and 180 days in county jail with a credit for 58 days served. It was the district attorney's decision to drop the serious violent felony charges that would have rendered the suspect ineligible for early release. And guess what? I looked into that, and believe it or not, the sheriff's department is right. The district attorney's office did allow for a plea deal situation in which the most serious charges pertaining to his violent crimes were dropped. So let's go to the Los Angeles Times. And let me be clear, Los Angeles Times loves to carry water for the failed policies that we've been seeing from George Gascon in Los Angeles. They love it. They defend him all the time. But this is what they wrote. Del Cid had previously been arrested December 8th by Los Angeles County deputies from the Lomita Station booking records show. He was cited and released the next day. Records do not show the alleged offense, but it appeared to be a felony level crime. Okay, so we don't know the details of what that felony was, but he was released the next day after committing this felony crime. Okay, great. The Los Angeles Police Department's Harbor Division arrested Del Cid on February 10th, and he was charged 5 days later with burglary, domestic violence, assault with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment, and intimidating a witness. The crimes reportedly occurred on February 9th, records show. All right, these crimes are serious. He didn't just get caught with a baggie of pot, okay? He committed violent crimes. And by the way, the 180-day sentence is super short considering there's like kidnapping involved, domestic violence, intimidating a witness. These are serious crimes. Okay, so the initial sentence, 180 days, I would venture to say pretty short. I know there are people on the left that are like, no, not too short, 180 days, too long. Good that he beat up his wife. Okay, I'm embellishing a little bit, but that's how the left comes across when it comes to these types of stories. 180 days, he didn't even serve the 180 days. He was released the next day. On March 10th, he pleaded no contest to burglary and domestic violence, while the other charges were dismissed. A judge in Long Beach sentenced him to 180 days in jail and 4 years of probation, court records show. He was released the morning after that sentence was handed down, having spent a month behind bars, according to Sheriff's Department booking records. So he actually was able to get away with the assault. Assault with a deadly weapon, that charge was dropped as part of the plea deal that was negotiated by the district attorney's office, by the prosecutors. Do you understand that? Why would you drop the most serious charges here? No false imprisonment charges, that was dropped too. No charges for intimidating a witness because that was dropped as well as part of this plea deal. I want to be clear. When I was signing up for criminal justice reform, I thought we were going to do things like reform our prisons. So they're actually, rehabilitating people. I thought we were going to do something about policing. I thought we were going to end qualified immunity so cops can't get away with shooting down unarmed individuals as they're running away from them. We didn't do that. I thought that we were going to provide funding for actual robust programs that would help nonviolent offenders transition back into society so they live full, happy lives. Didn't do that either. Instead, we're playing this game where we just, by the way, I also never thought that anyone was advocating for the early release of violent criminals, including individuals who have literally been in prison for murdering others. But it turns out California's all about it, and I ain't. I think it's a terrible, terrible way to go about this. This ain't reform. It's all about playing patty cakes with people who are not in any way rehabilitated, who have committed incredibly violent crimes, and in some cases, robbed others of their lives. And get a load of this Los Angeles Times headline. Amid COVID-19, California releases some inmates doing time for murder. Advocates push to free more. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. I don't believe in the death penalty. But I would say that if you murder someone and you have spent time in a facility, in a prison that does not rehabilitate, because that's what our prisons are, it's very unlikely that you're rehabilitated, and just releasing you into the world with no rehabilitation, it's a bad idea, bad idea. More than 63,000 inmates convicted of violent crimes will be eligible for good behavior credits that shorten their sentences by 1/3 instead of 1/5 that had been in place since 2017. That includes nearly 20,000 inmates who are serving life sentences with the possibility of parole. Keep in mind, by the way, we don't even know how these good credits are determined. There's really no specificity there. More than 10,000 inmates convicted of a second serious but nonviolent offense under the state's 3 strikes law will be eligible for release after serving half their sentences. That's an increase from the current time served credit of 1/3 of their sentence. And if you think that, no, come on, Anna, they're not releasing violent criminals, even though the reports indicate they are. This is all about nonviolent individuals. No, actually, a much smaller portion of the individuals who have been released from California state prisons are nonviolent offenders. Los Angeles Times has the numbers. The same increased release time will apply to nearly 2,900 nonviolent third strikers, the corrections department projected. And the reason why is because the nonviolent offenders are in county jails. The majority of them are not in state prisons. So this is the state releasing inmates. And there was a little bit of backlash, luckily. And the California Supreme Court weighed in the summer. And I think that they made the right decision here. Because fact of the matter is, California voters overwhelmingly voted in favor of something known as Prop 57. And so Prop 57, I voted for it, was marketed to voters in California as, hey, our prison population is ridiculous. We have all sorts of nonviolent people serving time when they shouldn't be. So I was in favor of early release because I thought, as it was advertised to me, that it was only nonviolent individuals. But it didn't work out that way. And so there was a fight, there was backlash, and finally the California Supreme Court weighed in. The justices found that the ballot materials revealed that the voters intended to exclude any inmate currently serving a term for a violent felony from early parole consideration, regardless of whether such an inmate has also been convicted of a nonviolent felony. And the high court ruled that corrections officials acted properly in drafting regulations that exclude from early parole consideration any prisoner who is currently serving a term of incarceration for a violent felony. There's a lot we can do to reform our justice system, and I have a long history of talking about those things. So if anyone thinks that I'm just trying to be tough on crime, you are mistaken. But for anyone who thinks we need to be soft on violent criminals, including those who have committed murder, not in favor of that. I think it's dumb policy. I think it's dangerous policy. And for progressives who are looking to rally support, I don't know if you're gonna win if you have all these people being victimized by violent criminals who are just released from prison with no rehabilitative plan in place. That's the reality. I know some of you wanted some specificity when I talk about the disastrous decisions being made in California. Here's one of them. We got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more news, including one of the most terrible stories involving the ramifications of these abortion bans in various states. Stay tuned. We've got that and more coming right up. Ice cream. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our social break. Lots of comments to get to. Let's shout out our Twitch community, which, by the way, if you're wondering, how can I watch you guys on Twitch? It's twitch.tv/TYT. Mistress Dragon renewed their 15-month subscription with a comment, "Hey, Anna, bring on the spicy takes, please. I need the pick-me-up." Well, I don't know how much this hour has given you a pickup, but I hope you're enjoying it. We've got Vitengale rating with a party of 10. Thank you so much for that. Drew in Georgia gifted a tier 1 sub. Thank you. Expat Echo renewed their 17-month subscription. Member since 2015. Love you all. We love you right back. We've got Archer Spade who renewed their 17-month subscription. J Unit YT subscribed with Prime. Drew in Georgia gifted 3 tier 1 subs. Thank you so much. And finally, we've got Kyle 8315. Can we hook Trump up with Alex Jones's lawyer who turned over his whole phone? Oh, I would love that. I just had a fantasy about it. It'd be so good. What a wonderful lawyer. Anyway, let's go to our YouTube community. Melissa Stoner became a member. Thank you so much for the support. Anna Marie Starr renewed their 19th month membership with the comment, "Make my wish a foundation wish is to be able to vote for Bernie and AOC on the 2024 ballot." Yeah, I said it. I mean, that's definitely a better option than some of the other people I've been seeing people talk about, like Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, I mean, like, he is such a target-rich environment. If he's really thinking about running for president, the Democratic Party is really in for some pain. Talisha Conklin renewed their 30-month membership. Thank you, Anna, for being my spirit person and expressing everything I feel. Thank you so much for the support. Greg Hill on the crime story says, "You don't have to be a conservative to find this outrageous. Good on Anna for reporting and examining it." Greg, thank you, I love you. This is like the new Tulsi Gabbard story for me. And I said that to our producers earlier today, because I'm never gonna come on the show and just like make things up or talk about something before I've really fully looked into it and investigated it. And I just see it and it's not right. And it almost feels like, because think about this, progressives haven't been able to win on any issue, Medicare for all, paid family leave, like all of these other issues. For some reason, it's like this unbearable uphill battle. But it is fascinating that these crime-related policies are happening so easily, even in some red states, by the way. And I'm wondering if this is done on purpose as a way to campaign against the left. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but it is wrong. Ewa Weeman writes in and says, there is something fishy going on in that DA's department and that police department. Yeah, 100%, I agree. All right, let's move on to our super chats. One super chat because we're running out of time. Parker writes in and says, hey, I was wondering if maybe there should be another one of those TYT political bets between Anna and Cenk. It could be about any topic, but it could be fun. Love it. I make the best predictions. Huge. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TYT. I just want to give a shout out to Anthony McLendon, who writes in and just had such a great comment that made me feel pretty good. So thank you, Anthony. Hi, Anna. I love your Wednesday solo hour. When you compared it to making a case in court, you were spot on. Each story makes a point, then you tie each point together, make the case, and show how it fits into the larger picture. Thank you. I mean, in the era of like super quick, short videos and short attention spans, it feels good to know that the longer form content is still appreciated. And I'm glad that you guys are getting something out of it. Well, let's move on to our next story because this is just the continuation of the pain and suffering that people are feeling across this country as a result of the reversal of Roe v. Wade. And it's one of the hardest stories that I've produced in a long time. So let's get to it.
She's going to pass this fetus in the toilet. She's going to have to deal with that on her own. There's a 50% chance, greater than 50% chance that she's going to lose her uterus. There's a 10% chance that she will develop sepsis and herself die. That weighs on me. I voted for that bill.
You just heard from a Republican state lawmaker from the state of South Carolina, which is working to pass a near like abortion ban with very few exceptions. In fact, there's only one exception in the legislation that's being debated right now, and it would be to save a woman's life if the pregnancy is putting her health or life in jeopardy. Now, Neil Collins is the representative you heard from in that video, and he seems to feel a little bit of remorse for voting in favor of legislation that restricts abortions in his state because he was confronted by a specific story involving a woman who had a non-viable fetus and her health was in jeopardy as a result of that, but she was denied an abortion anyway. He gives more detail in the next clip.
A 19-year-old girl appeared at the ER. She was 15 weeks pregnant. Her water broke. And the fetus was unviable. The standard of care was to advise her that they could extract or she could go home. The attorneys told the doctors that because of the fetal heartbeat bill, because that 15-week-old had a heartbeat, the doctors could not extract. I followed up with the doctor a week later. She had heard nothing, did not know about the 19-year-old. Thank God I followed up 2 weeks later. She did return to the ER. They did extract the now non-beating fetus. What we do matters.
And you can see he's visibly emotional there. And look, I gotta say, while I might disagree with this state representative Neil Collins on pretty much every issue, it's so rare to see any Republican politician, whether it's on a federal or state level, who has any humanity left, really. And the fact that he's willing to speak out against something that he himself voted in favor of, knowing full well that the majority, every Republican in that state, every Republican lawmaker in that state in favor of this kind of legislation. I just want to give him some props even though there might be a lot of disagreement. Because again, it's rare to see that level of humanity among Republican politicians these days. Now, State Representative Neil Collins told South Carolina's House Judiciary Committee that he would not be voting on a ban that only has exceptions for saving the life of the mother. The bill provides no provisions for victims of rape or incest. And clearly, as you can tell from the story that he shared with everybody, state also doesn't make any exceptions for a woman whose actual health is in jeopardy unless she, gets that unviable fetus extracted just because it had a heartbeat. In their minds, a heartbeat. Doesn't matter that that pregnancy isn't gonna make it. Doesn't matter that this 19-year-old, 19, worst case scenario, which doctors put at 50%, by the way, she was gonna lose her uterus, which means she would never be able to have children again. Who cares? Who cares? We're not draconian enough. We're here to talk about making this even more draconian. That's what this whole meeting was about. And so unfortunately, the near total abortion ban has advanced in the South Carolina legislature. A South Carolina House committee advanced a near total abortion ban, largely along party lines, in a 13-7 vote on Tuesday. The bill, which was advanced out of the Republican-controlled state House Judiciary Committee, would prohibit abortions in the state with exceptions in case where the life or health of the mother is at risk. 5 committee members did not cast a vote. But even so, guys, I mean, clearly this woman's health was at risk. I mean, she could have died from sepsis. But the council representing the hospital was like, don't take that risk. You might be prosecuted. These Republican lawmakers are nuts. They'll rain terror on you. You don't want to lose your license. You don't want to go to court. You don't want the hospital to go bankrupt due to legal fees. Don't do it. Just don't do it. And they didn't do it until that unviable fetus no longer had a heartbeat. And these consequences for the Republican culture war, the culture war that is waged on women in this country, are dire, okay? Because while luckily it seems like this 19-year-old ended up being okay, that was a massive risk. And then there are other incidents. Like let's take a quick trip to Louisiana, for instance, where one woman found out that her fetus was not developing properly. The fetus doesn't have a head. Let me just repeat that one more time. The fetus does not have a head. So eventually, since the fetus is not developing appropriately, she was gonna miscarry. And so she could either wait for that day, which will be painful and potentially dangerous, or she can go to the doctor's office and they can extract the unviable, headless fetus. But Louisiana wouldn't allow her to do that because of their abortion restrictions. I mean, it's just, there it is. Woman may be forced to give birth to a headless baby because of an abortion ban. Abortions in Louisiana are now only permitted to prevent the death or substantial risk of death due to a physical condition or to prevent the serious permanent impairment of a life-sustaining organ of a pregnant woman. And Nancy Davis, who's the woman who's now going to have to suffer the consequences of the Republican war on women, says, "It's hard knowing that I'm carrying it to bury it." Super pro-life, right? She's gonna have to deliver, likely in her bathroom, sitting on a toilet by herself, maybe with her partner if her partner's there. She's gonna have to deliver a headless fetus. Either that, or she's got to gather the resources necessary to travel out of state to a place called civilization, where she gets to make decisions about her own body. Just today on Twitter, a conservative who's upset at anyone who would try to persuade Americans to get the COVID vaccine was mad at me because I was like, look, you guys want to get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine. I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want. And his argument to me was, oh, well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to have my bodily autonomy. Right wingers crack me up. You have no place in any conversation pertaining to bodily autonomy, especially when you support policies that force women to give birth to a headless baby in their home because doctors can't do it. You always talk about bodily autonomy. Let's talk about the bodily autonomy of a 10-year-old rape victim in Ohio who had to travel out of state to abort the rapist baby. I mean, it's just disgusting. These people are gross. They don't believe in freedom. They don't believe in what this country was supposed to stand for, the idea of America. They just want to crush you with whatever their alleged belief system is. And at the end of the day, they don't even believe their own belief system. Because there's an endless number of Republicans in this country who have rushed their women over to the abortion clinic as soon as they found out there was an unwanted pregnancy. You should talk to Congressman DeJarlais, whose wife and mistress got abortions from them urging to do it. It's all about punishment, it's all about control. And for politicians, it's about political power. That's it. All right, we're out of time. We've got more news with Wozni Lombre in the second hour. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years,
Right.
believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he was the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com. We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and Wosny Lombre with you. Woz, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Super excited to be back today.
I'm super excited to have you. You know, there's a story a little later pertaining to Greg Gutfeld, you know, just kind of trashing the idea that Congress needs representation from diverse groups of people. And I'm really curious what you have to say about that. So everyone tune in. We're gonna talk about that a little later in the show. But for now, a story I didn't get to in the first hour, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts, Woz, has to do with the possibility of Biden seeking re-election. So let's talk about it. Democratic Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney is now apologizing after she suggested that not only is Joe Biden not gonna run for re-election, but he shouldn't run for re-election. It's a big no-no. It's a big no-no. You're not allowed to tell the truth if you're a Democratic lawmaker. And so this all started with an interview she had with the New York Times, and I want to share that exchange with you. So the reporter Eleanor Randolph asks, should President Biden run again? Okay. Carolyn Maloney says, off the record, he's not running again. Okay, let's pause for a second before I continue reading. For anyone who is giving a reporter the details on some controversial story, but you want it to be off the record. You don't just say off the record and then continue to like spout out all of these things that you want off the record. You have to get agreement from the reporter that it's actually off the record. But you know, Carolyn Maloney, she's only a United States Congresswoman, so what does she know? So at that point, Jody Totman writes or chimes in and says, not off the record, on the record. And Maloney says, on the record? No, he should not run again. I mean, she made herself clear, Woz, and good on her. I agree with her. Maloney is absolutely right. But she got some backlash, and that led to a lot of backpedaling. Before we get to that, what do you think so far?
I like how she's using the on the record, off the record, sort of like not it. You know what I mean? It's like if you just say it or if you just say jinx, it automatically doesn't apply to you. I love that logic there.
It's so good. It's so good. Now, a statement is not considered off the record, again, unless both parties agree to it, just to be clear. Okay, so why is this important? Maloney's assertion is one of the strongest yet regarding Biden's uncertain 2024 plans, No, I think mine was pretty certain. I know I'm not a congresswoman, but I literally said Biden would be stupid to run again, and I stand by that statement, unlike the cowards that are backpedaling now. Maloney's assertion is one of the strongest yet regarding Biden's uncertain 2024 plans, coming as it does from a long-serving Democratic lawmaker who has known the president for decades. Other representatives, including Dean Phillips and Angie Craig of Minnesota, have said that they do not want to see the president run again in 2 years. Okay, so there have been some others who have said that. But this is actually not the first time Maloney has made these remarks. In fact, let's take a look at this tweet. This is the recount. During New York 12 debate, Congressional District 12 debate, lightning round, candidates were asked if Biden should run again in 2024. Representative Carolyn Maloney, I don't believe he is running for re-election. Nadler says, too early to say. Says Dems should talk about it after the midterms. And then this Suraj Patel person jumps in and says, yes, okay, he should run again. Anyway, Maloney, by the way, is vying for New York's 12th congressional district seat. Nonetheless, her race is extremely close. Polls suggest that the contest is tight. Nadler has to run to Maloney's left, oh God forbid, highlighting his opposition to the Patriot Act and the Iraq War. In contrast with Maloney's votes in favor of both, oh my God, George Bush administration's priorities, while Maloney has countered that New Yorkers should reelect a woman at a time when reproductive rights are under attack. Okay, so Maloney, if that's the only standard, it just has to be a woman because abortion, I agree, the abortion bans are a problem. So which women, like Liz Cheney? Like, just being a woman does not automatically mean you're gonna have the right takes on policies in this country. Like, I hate that line of thinking, it drives me crazy. But let me just finish this up because Schumer did endorse Nadler. So she seemed to have cold feet in the end when it came to the whole Biden question, and possibly in fear of losing this race, she decided to backpedal, and it was swift. So let's take a look.
Mr. President, I apologize. I want you to run. I happen to think you won't be running, but when you run or if you run, I will be there 100%. You have deserved it. You are a great president, and thank you for everything you've done for my state and all the states and all the cities in America. Thank you, Mr. President.
I have strong thoughts, but Waz, I wanna kick it over to you first.
Oh my God. I mean, like, first of all, the apology, who is that for? Nobody believes that. And if the Biden camp and the Democratic Party power structure establishment are angry with her, this isn't going to fix it. Never mind the fact that, like, Joe Biden's cooked. Do you guys see this guy when they trot him out to do anything in the public? He looks horrible. He sounds horrible. He's old as hell. He's been through a lot. Let this man go home and die, people. Do they want him to die in office? Like, what do they want from this guy? And I'm not trying to be ageist here. It's just like, he's done. It's obvious. And the part about elect a woman. I mean, I can think of another New Yorker who's a woman who might, who's been in the political seat of power recently, Ivanka Trump. What do you think about that one? Anna, do you think, is it Ivanka? I mean,
all we need,
or is Ivana? Which one is Trump's daughter? I can never remember.
Ivanka.
Okay,
Ivana is the one he buried at his golf course
yes,
to get
my
tax
bad.
breaks. Yeah, that's the.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, absolutely.
Rest in power. Actually.
No, I mean, that line of thinking is so incredibly stupid because there's no default value system based on your identity, right? Like, just because you're
what?
Like,
Anna,
anyway, I don't say this. Everyone knows, except for Maloney, apparently.
Wow.
And to know that Nadler is running to the left of her is pretty mind-blowing, because Nadler's, he's not the worst of the Democratic establishment, but I don't think of him as like some progressive or certainly not some leftist. So I'm against Maloney. Like, Maloney is crazy, and also I can't stand these weak, sniveling, self-interested, self-important politicians. Because if you're gonna say something, be real about it and say it and stand by what you're saying. Think before you speak. First of all, understand what off the record actually means and like what the terms are of saying something off the record, like educate yourself on that. But aside from that, do you want to represent the people in that district? Because I would venture to say that you need to be a strong, principled person who has actual values. And clearly Maloney lacks values, lacks any courage to stand by what she really believes, because the second she thinks it might hurt her political career, she backpedals and pretends as if like Biden is the most, it's like the Democratic version of Trump. Oh, Biden he's the strongest, he's alert, he's got that crisp look to him. Like, come on, just wake up. I can't stand these like weak Democrats. I hope she loses. Anyway, let's move on to our next story, because more books are being banned by the free speech squad in the country, Republicans. In the past year, we've seen an epidemic of book bannings in red states. And typically these are books that are written by authors who are people of color, members of the LGBTQ community. But one school in Texas is actually looking to ban a novel adaptation of Anne Frank's diary and even the Bible. So let's get into the details. All right, so why might these books, by the way, the Bible, have you read the Bible? Have you read Deuteronomy? Just saying, if we're gonna open Pandora's box and we're gonna go in this direction, Republicans better be careful. Now, ahead of the first day of school, the Keller Independent School District is removing all books that were challenged last year within the school district, including the Bible, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and a graphic novel adaptation of Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl or Young Girl. Okay, let's pause for a second. So I think it's really funny that they're doing this in some ways, because they're just doing a massive advertisement for these books, and nothing makes kids want to do something more than adults telling them they can't do it. So like, this is great. I guarantee you more kids are gonna end up reading these books and checking them out of the library as a result of all the attention that's now being directed toward these book bans. Attached to the email was a list of 41 book titles to be removed. 41 guys, 41 book titles to be removed, including all versions of the Bible and Gender Queer, a memoir by Maya Kobabe, which depicts her journey of gender identity and sexual orientation. Apologies if I mispronounced the last name there. So how does the challenging work exactly? Well, the Keller School District allows parents, employees, and district residents to file formal objections or challenges to books and instructional materials used in school. A committee then considers whether the materials are educationally suitable and makes a decision on whether the material will remain in schools. So we'll get into what's really driving this push to ban books in just a moment. But Waz, I'm curious what your thoughts are about this, because the left gets a lot of flack for its censorship of unsavory individuals. But I feel like there's no attention ever paid to the very real censorship that's taking place with the right wing.
Yeah. Obviously, this is just a stupid idea on its face. It goes against everything we allegedly stand for in this country when it comes to arming our citizenry with education and knowledge. Like, it goes against all of that stuff. But I would think as parents, man, like honestly, unless you're gonna turn your kid into some trust fund kid where it doesn't matter, if they're gonna compete out there in the world as future employees, whatever, people who are hireable, you're putting them behind the 8 ball here. They're just gonna be less dynamic than their counterparts, which I just think is a mistake. Like, you shouldn't be doing this to your kids, because other kids are gonna learn about a whole bunch of other stuff. They're gonna know how to communicate and deal with a whole range of other people, and your kids are just gonna be these cloistered, sheltered people who are useless.
No, you're absolutely right. I didn't think about that, but you're so right about that.
I mean, and just to put it like this, whenever you watch those cult documentaries or I escaped polygamy and all of that, and they're like, yo, we get out into the world and we're not prepared. Right? Yep. Like it takes a lot for us to get acclimated to the real world because we were so sheltered and so we're basically behind the 8 ball. That's what these people are voluntarily doing to their kids. It's ridiculous.
It absolutely is ridiculous. I mean, everyone loses in this censorious environment, including the children. You're right about that. And look, I haven't read the novel adaptation of Anne Frank's diary. But I did read Anne Frank's diary when I was either in 4th or 5th grade. It was assigned to us in class. And look, teaching elementary school kids about the Holocaust is not an easy thing to do. And what I appreciated about Anne Frank's diary is it helps you understand it without, yeah, it is. There are parts of it that are graphic, but you're old enough to understand what those things are because you're of a similar age. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so it's not like you're reading something. It's, oh my God, I'm learning about the human body for the first time in my life. And but what it does is it helps educate you and helps you understand what this meant on a very personal level for children, during the Holocaust. Like it was the introduction for a broader curriculum on the Holocaust. And I think it was an important part of my education and my experience in school. The idea of taking certain books away from kids just like blows my mind because you're right, they won't be well informed. They won't know much about the world around them and they'll just exist in this weird, black and white world that like conservatives desperately want to exist in. Now, since the committee, if you're wondering, how is this all happening, right? Like what's the push? What are the factors influencing this behind the scenes? Since the committee met and recommended keeping some challenged books, 3 new conservative school board members, all recipients of a Christian Political Action Committee's donations, were elected to the district's 7-member board of trustees. And according to the school district, all 41 challenge books are now to be reviewed again by campus staff and librarians to see if they meet a new board policy approved last week. That PAC, by the way, is called the Patriot Mobile Action. And here's an excerpt from their website. This is what they believe. We believe to save America, we must save our schools, of course, by banning books. Every child in America should be educated with the values of American exceptionalism. Look, I gotta be honest, as someone who went to public schools in California, we're already there, folks, okay? And that's in blue California, we're already there. Critical race theory and Marxist policies have no place in schools or government. Well, don't lose sleep over that because that didn't exist in our public schools either. Didn't learn about Marxism until I was in college. Voting is a civic duty and responsibility to maintain our constitutional republic. Okay, I can get behind that. And in our First Amendment, freedom of religion, get this, freedom of speech and to peaceably assemble. Okay, you don't really believe in freedom of speech because you're banning books. You're funding school board members who ban books on your behalf. That is what you're doing.
We did a segment recently on Rebel HQ about like these weird Airbnbs of slave quarters in Mississippi and all of that stuff. And I was making the point that I feel like a lot of black people, I think wrongheadedly, still carry the shame associated with the atrocities of slavery. And I'm just like, I don't know why black people internalize this shame. Being descendants of slaves is not shameful. The shameful part of that history was carried out by the white people, quite frankly, right? But I feel like throughout my life, when I hear black people talk about slavery, it's with this shame and it's like, oh, I'm still wearing the stain of slavery, even though I'm a doctor who makes like $500,000 a year and whatever. That's neither here nor there. But I do feel like in recent years, white people are carrying this damn shame. Like, and this is the sort of backlash to that. Like these people really do feel that the acts of slavery was shameful and they want to disassociate with it to the extent that they don't even want their kids to know about it. Like it's kind of crazy to watch this stuff play out.
Well, I mean, I just think they're worried about their kids learning about the reality of and the historic elements of race relations in the country. And I think they're afraid that their kids are going to judge them. I think that's what it's really about. I think they do to some extent feel shame, but I think they're more concerned about their children questioning them, or maybe even questioning their ancestors, their heritage. I think that's what it's really about.
Mommy, did you ever swim in an all-white swimming pool?
I mean, depending on her age, she probably did. I mean, think about it.
Yeah,
the civil rights movement wasn't that long ago.
Of course. All that segregation stuff wasn't that long ago. And I will say this, just as a final note on this, Anna, at least they're being consistent, because my God, so much violence and sex in the Bible. I mean, forget about fire and brimstone, eye for an eye. This guy Abraham had so many kids, so much sex, like you wouldn't even believe it. So yeah, I'm glad they're banning that, because we don't want the kids to be fruitful and try to multiply. We got to stop that.
All right, we got to take a break. I'm just gonna leave it right there. I'm gonna let that breathe. We're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we've got more news, including an update on the Biden administration meddling in the railroaders' efforts to strike for better working conditions and better pay. That and more coming right up. Ice cream. Welcome back to our social break. Melissa writes in and says, yesterday's Dr. Oz coverage was great. The pores, Jenk's live realization that Oz had never shopped before, plus Bart's great laugh. Chef's kiss, hilarious. I'm really happy you enjoyed it. There's some more Oz dunking later in the show. We've got Monkey Eat Snake writing in saying, hey Anna, I love you, been listening for years. Love you right back, thank you. Jason Ray says, I'd say harming the mental health of a woman by forcing them to endure this kind of brutality is harming a vital organ, no? Jason, we're on the same page. I mean, the cruelty associated with taking bodily autonomy away from women, getting in between women and their doctors, it is only meant to be cruel. And it's hilarious to me to see, like the story that I just did about the woman in Louisiana who's gonna be forced to deliver a headless fetus. A right winger responded to that by saying, like, that's not true, that's not true. Why are you guys denying? Like, you guys fought for this and you won. Why are you trying to run away from it now? This is what you did. Shouldn't you be proud? Anyway, Chaplain Fred, AKA Prayer Dragon says, hi Anna, thank you for staying salty and passionate with the news. I know we want Trump locked up, but who will have the guts to do it, the FBI or DOJ? Let's dispel the notion that Trump will ever spend a single day behind bars, okay? If you want that to be my big prediction, if someone wants to take a bet with me on that, I'll do it, because it's hard for me to believe that even though he took home top secret classified documents that are only to be reviewed in secure government facilities, doesn't matter. I mean, he's been treated as if he's above the law. He gets investigated, and somehow, even after these investigations, he gets away with it. Slaps on the wrist. All right, let's go to Chrome Shock, who renewed their 22-month membership. Hi Anna, always enjoying TYT, Turk and Toke time. No, I love that. All right, let's move over to our YouTube members. Lisa Loveday became a member. Welcome. I hope you enjoy our bonus episode that's members only today. We've got, let's see, who else? Lonzetta, who says, seriously, why would you want to want the stress of the White House at Biden's age unless you're an egomaniac? Yeah, I was gonna weigh in on that, Waz, because you keep saying, like, let him go. Why do they want him to do this? He wants to do this, Waz. He wants to do this. Like, what? You just have a bunch of like, what's the name? You have a bunch of like golems running around, like, precious.
Yeah, I guess I'm just built differently, because like, honestly, if I could retire right now, I absolutely would, and I'm 35 years old. I would have no problem hanging up the old jersey, never working again, except for like, stuff that I felt like doing. Like the idea of a job that there's no time off when you're the president. You sleep 4 hours a night, you get up, as soon as you wake up, you're working. Sounds like misery to me.
Are you sure there's no time off when you're president? Like Trump literally had that baked into every schedule, like executive time.
I love that. Shouts to Trump, great president.
All right, we gotta get back to the show, everyone. See you there. Welcome back to the show. Anna Kasparian and Wosny Lombre with you. Just want to give a shout out to our TYT member, Jim, who writes in and says that he appreciated the reporting on the California prison and justice system. Appreciate the love and support. Thank you for watching. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. So without further ado, let's get a little into some labor related news, because the Biden administration felt the need to meddle in efforts for workers to strike. And I don't appreciate it. So I wanted to give you the details and update on it. So let's do it. Railroad workers and railroad corporations are now in the midst of a fierce contract negotiation. And a board that was appointed by President Joe Biden has actually just sided with the corporations. I mean, isn't that shocking? Now, this is a story that we're updating you on. TYT had covered the initial reports on this, but just to give you a refresher before we get to the latest news, the railroad workers have been without a contract for almost 3 years. 3 years, no contract. And you know what that means? That means that they have not gotten a pay increase. And that's a big problem, especially when you consider the inflation that we're experiencing right now. And that's pushing workers to quit, because they're like, I can't make do with the money I'm getting paid for this work, and I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. So some of these workers quit, and the ones that remain end up working punishing hours. In some ways, they're on call on their days off. And it's just been a complete and utter disaster. The conditions aren't good, the pay isn't good. And so last month, the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen voted 99%, nearly unanimous, in favor of going on strike. And the day before the union was legally able to strike, the White House got involved. Biden stepped in, and he created what's referred to as a Presidential Emergency Board, or PEB, okay? And he did this by executive order, which prevented the unions from being able to go on strike. And so it prevents them from going on strike for at least 30 days. And understand why he did that, okay? If the railroad workers go on strike, any supply chain issues that we've already experienced will be exacerbated considerably. And that puts the White House in panic, puts the corporations in panic. This is why organized labor is a powerful thing. But unfortunately, Biden decided to step in and prevent them from legally striking for 30 days, okay? So even more context, you might be wondering, well, does Biden even have the executive authority to do that? He absolutely does. The authority to create a presidential emergency board was established in the Railway Labor Act of 1926. So Biden's executive order is not without precedent, okay? But here's my argument, Woz. Instead of preventing them from striking, how about you apply pressure to the corporations that are doing real well to share that revenue? Just pay the workers. Please just pay the workers. And they just won't do it, right? So now we're in this disastrous situation where the workers are unable to strike legally, and the negotiations have not been going well. So let's get to what we know from the latest round of negotiations. Number one, profits for these railroad companies on the rise. Let's take a look at this graph by using Bloomberg Intelligence. It was put together by the Washington Post. It shows that the average profit margin for the top 5 US railroads has more than doubled. So they're doing well, and they could share that wealth with the workers, but they're refusing to do it. So yesterday, Biden's PEB released its recommendations for a new contract. Okay, so this is the group that Biden put together. Okay, this isn't even the corporation that's making the proposal. The PEB report proposes a 22% cumulative pay increase over 5 years, retroactive to 2020. The proposal, which works out to an average 4.4% wage increase per year, is little more than half the current rate of inflation of 8.5%, entailing a major cut in real pay. That's what they came up with. We're gonna give you a raise, but it's not gonna be enough to even mitigate inflation. So it's not a raise. It's still a pay cut when you consider inflation. It's just a disaster. Even worse, the PEB did not recommend any changes to the punishing attendance policies that railroad companies have implemented. I'll get to those details in a moment, but first, Waz, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in.
I mean, you pretty much said everything there is to say here. There was a lot of, tough talk. I think I was even on the show when Biden did his tough talk to Amazon, and we're unionizing and we're coming for you and blah, blah, blah. A lot of lip service paid to the labor movement in this country, putrid as it already is. And so, to see him do this and just basically punch the working man in the face is just disgusting. And, symbolically, I'm not one who cares about symbolism too much, but like, the reason why a labor movement was even started was because of the freaking railroads. Like, just the punishing conditions, the amount of people who literally died laying down the railroads in this country, right? Like, the conditions were so just unacceptable and inhumane. Like, this is the industry that galvanized a labor movement in this country. And so to see Joe Biden, 100-something years later, just be a complete corporate flack and hack, it's quite disgusting. And again, Anna, it's beautiful that you said it. It was like, this is just Joe Biden executive order. He didn't need to go whip up no votes in Congress. This is just by fiat. He could do this. And what he chooses to do with this power is to just punch these workers in the nose, which is just shameful and awful.
And I can't help but think about how he is very much willing to flex his executive muscle when it comes to preventing workers from striking. But when it comes to other executive privileges, like the ability to, with a stroke of a pen, cancel student loan debt, it would take no effort, really. He pretends like he doesn't know whether he has the ability to do that through an executive order. He absolutely does. These are federal government loans, and the education secretary, with Biden's blessing, can cancel the debt. I mean, it's such a layup. That's the thing that I don't get. So many easy things that Biden could do, like canceling the debt is one thing. Taking marijuana off the Schedule I drug list is another thing he could do. Easy layups, layup after layup, but he misses every time. So I want to give the workers a voice here. Let's start with one of the railroad workers from Virginia who says, "I work for Norfolk Southern. We have a long pool in which the conductors get no set days off. They leave their home terminal and can spend up to 36 hours or more in a hotel waiting for their next train." And I don't know for sure, but I would venture to say that as they're waiting for that next train in a hotel, when they would probably much rather be at home, they're not getting paid for those hours. I'm not sure, I'm just suspecting that that's the case. He continues to say, or she, I'm unsure because this person gave the quote anonymously, often that will be their day off. So they're like on call or waiting for their next job on their day off in a hotel, waiting on their train back home. When they get back home to their home terminal, they're often back to work after their 10-hour mandatory rest period, depending on how quick the pool is turning. Here's another worker from Texas. "I was forced to take stimulants to stay awake and sleeping pills to sleep. Then more stimulants to wake up from the pills I took to go to sleep. It got to where I couldn't sleep at all. Then I would fall asleep for way too long and couldn't wake up. I literally felt like I was going crazy. I mean, the torture that these workers are going through, both physically and mentally, is insane. And again, to see Biden taint the one thing that I felt the need to give him credit on, which is, his NLRB has been pretty good. Standards are low, let's keep that in mind, right? But good relative to other administrations. But he has now soiled that one positive thing in his administration by stepping in and basically preventing these workers from striking to ensure that they get better working conditions and better pay. Finally, let me just tell you what happens next. We've entered another 30-day period in which the unions cannot strike, and the negotiations are ongoing. Now, if an agreement is not reached at the end of the 30 days, then unions would be able to strike. However, there's something else to keep in mind. Congress would likely take initiative there. They would intervene as they did in 1992. There's precedent for that. So that was when the International Association of Machinists struck against a single railroad, CSX. And so Congress stepped in, and Congress and the White House moved with rare speed. They're always so fast when it comes to these issues, right? Rare speed to end a crippling 2-day nationwide rail shutdown that already had begun to threaten the economy by forcing layoffs at coal mines and auto assembly plants. The House and Senate passed emergency legislation barring strikes and lockouts by large margins, setting up a last best offer arbitration system to resolve the 3 major union management disputes that had idled virtually all US railroads. So there's 2 things that I think Congress is very speedy with. Number 1, defense spending. They'll pass that bill right away. And anything that allows for the crushing of workers, certainly workers who might strike. So that there you have it. That's where we're at with that railroad worker negotiation situation, and we'll fill you in as we get more details. But yeah. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. We're gonna take a break. We'll be right back. So whenever I do the show with John, it's now being referred to as Casparola. It's the Casparola Hour. But since he's not here today, Mr. Lumberg wrote in, AKA Inatech Dragon, of course. Lambrarian doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well as Casparola, but it's always good to see the Waz.
Hey, what's going on? Appreciate the love. By the way, Office Space, one of the greatest movies of all time. It's not even a question.
Just a random point?
Well, that's what his name is based on, Lumberg.
Oh, that's
and
right.
All of that. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I totally missed that. Wow. All right, let's go to Eclectic Miscellanea, who says an assault is a deadly weapon. Just ask the insane religious right, the corporate media, and the corrupt feckless Democrats. And Hal Sparks, little crybaby. We've got Repect, the political catboy, who says, love the new shirt at Shop TYT. You guys should check it out. Totally gonna get one. We need a your religious beliefs have no place in American politics with the First Amendment on it as well. All right, suggestion noted. And we've got one more comment. Monica says, you should clarify, as should everyone who knows, that heartbeat is not heartbeat, that's right, but electrical signals some have interpreted as a heartbeat. From what I've heard, a fetus doesn't have a heartbeat at 15 weeks, or at least at 6 weeks. I'm not sure at 15 weeks. I remember reading up about this, so I got to double check and fact check that. But yeah, a fetus does not have an actual developed heart that's beating at 6 weeks. You're right about that. So thank you for that reminder. Let's move over to. Did I read all the member comments? That's amazing. All right, let's go to Twitch subs. Trans vampire Carmilla renewed their 23-month subscription, and the comment is just gasp. We've got Stoic John, who subscribed with Prime. Thank you for that. We've got Weston 614, who renewed their 16th month membership or subscription, and Terry Berry Zero renewed their 26-month subscription with the comment, "Hey y'all, hey." All right, let's move over to our super chats. We've got one, definitely dissonant, says, "Where's the dark Biden memes at when his gaze turns toward workers? Love the show. Thank you for covering in such a succinct way." Thank you. And look, anytime we do labor related stories, I would say at least 85% of the time, those are stories that are pitched by our producer, Taylor Ellis. He's fantastic, cares deeply about these issues, and he tends to produce these stories as well. So give him a shout out as well. I know we've got people behind the scenes, you don't see them on camera, but the show would be impossible to do without them. All right, we still have a little bit of time. I don't know what to do with all this time, guys. We've got Grandma's World, who became a member on YouTube. Thank you. Hong writes in and says, "I'm sad to see Cheney go. I'm not sad to see Cheney go, but the fact that they went after her over Trump tells us a lot about the rise of fascism." I agree with you on that. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah.
Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and Wosny Lombre with you. Woz is a host over at The Ringer. He also hosts an incredible podcast called Woke Bros with Nando Vila. And he's also a contributor to Rebel HQ. You wear many hats, Woz.
Yeah,
many,
man, I'm working like a Haitian.
Love it, love it. Nah, I try to catch Woke Bros every week. I know you're super busy. I kind of wish you could do it more than just once a week. It's one of my favorite podcasts because it's just real.
Thank you so much.
It's real.
Thank you.
It's not stuffy.
Appreciate that. We try to just give the folks the news of the day, obviously inspired by work that you guys do, our people at Majority, like people who are talking about the issues that we all care about. So yeah, man, check out Woke Bros when you guys get a chance every single Thursday morning, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, whatever.
Love it. All right, well, let's get to Fox News and what they're up to.
As a minority at the table, as a black gay man in America, I think it's very simple. We want a seat at the table. White men have a seat at the table.
You don't have one? You're sitting right here.
How many openly black gay legislators do we have? How many openly black gay members of Congress that we have?
I don't count them. You know what? There are not a lot of short guys in the NBA, and I don't count that either.
When it comes to
I don't watch basketball and go, where is Greg Gutfeld?
Greg Gutfeld, of course, having another one of his mask off moments and admitting that he doesn't believe black or gay people, necessarily need to be part of our government to represent the groups or the identity that they are part of. But I thought what he said there was interesting because the comparison he made between someone serving as a black gay lawmaker is clearly very different. It's just different from a short person playing professional basketball. Being short in professional basketball is a pretty significant disadvantage in that professional sport. Being a gay black representative or senator or lawmaker is not in any way a disadvantage. So it's a weird comparison, but I think it kind of shows you where Gutfeld's head is at when it comes to diversity in Congress. But I'm curious what you think about that exchange, Woz.
Look, it's hard for me to ever feel bad when Uncle Toms and Coons go on Fox News and they get clowned by the people that they volunteered to work with. So it's hard for me to get pretty, riled up about the idea that this guy doesn't think openly gay Black folks deserve a seat at the table in, governance. That I can't get riled up about that because you made your bed, now laying it. However, what I would like to ask that openly gay Black man at the table, which openly gay Black guys should have a seat at the table? You know what I mean? Like, cause we don't have to pretend that everybody is exactly the same. Like, where they coming from, what are their backgrounds educationally, monetarily? Like, I would like to know, who are these gay Black guys that we're sending to govern the country? And are they gonna be from a diverse background, or are they just gonna be the type of cats who get to have a job at Fox News?
Yeah, and I have to say, well, there are, I don't know if this is an indictment on me or if it's a good thing. I just want everyone to be treated fairly, equally, right? So apologies if this makes me look bad, but there are 2 openly gay Black members of Congress, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were gay, because I don't care. I don't care about their sexuality. Again, I don't want them to be discriminated against. I want them to have a seat at the table, but in the grand scheme of things, their personal identity, their sexual orientation, it has no bearing on my life at all, right? I just want them to be treated with dignity like everyone else. That's it. But yeah, Richie Torres and Mondaire Jones became the first 2 gay Black lawmakers ever elected to Congress. And currently there are 61 Black members of Congress, which is actually much higher than I thought. And that comes out to 11% of Congress, which is a record amount. Also, there are currently 11 LGBTQ lawmakers in Congress. That comes out to 2% of congressional lawmakers, which is also a record amount. And so we're seeing, on one hand, it's a great thing, right? We are seeing more representation of various groups. We're seeing more diversity in Congress, and I love that. At the same time, it's really interesting to see how the conditions under which the very groups of people they're representing have not really improved, right? So this idea of the big solution is just to have diverse lawmakers isn't really a solution, because it's not just about what their identity is, it's about what they represent, what their value system is, what they want to do for the very constituents that elect them into power in the first place.
Yeah, and I would love to know from that Black gay homie from Fox News, what specific needs in his own life that aren't being met right now that would be met by having more Black gay members of Congress, et cetera, more Black gay members in, on their staffs, et cetera. I would love to know what his individual needs that aren't being met, because I bet the only individual needs are the sort of emotional hit, the nice feeling he would get by just knowing that there were more people up there. I don't know that this guy has any material, actual needs that aren't being met right now that would be by having more people that look like him and come from the same background as far as their sexual preferences him. I would love to hear what he had to say about that. Now, people that are in underserved, poor communities who happen to be Black and happen to be gay, yeah, they're going through it a lot, and they need a lot of help with a lot of things. I don't know necessarily that this brother, as lost as he may be, Anna, I don't know that any of his needs aren't actually being met.
Yeah, so I should just disclose, he's been on TYT in the past. I think his name is, we'll look it up in a second. I'm sorry, I just blanked, but he's been on the show before. He's not a bad guy, but I hear what you're saying. And look, I think that there is something valuable in showing up to the Fox News house and representing a perspective that's never, Richard Fowler. Okay, I just wanted to double check, make sure I had that name right. I think it's important, like if you're going on there to play patty cakes with them, I agree with your take 100%. And we've seen all sorts of alleged progressives go on Tucker Carlson's show and like fillet him in real time. And like, I'm not in favor of that. But if you're gonna go on and push back against whatever narrative that they have, I like that. I think that could be useful. But I hear what you're saying. Far too often we see people get lured in by the money or the fame, and then they immediately turn their back on what they claim to be their values.
I mean, you take a job at Fox News, like, you know the vibes, man. Like, and by the way, dude had a point. You are at the table. Like, they put your ass on Fox News. That's the point. Having more of you guys up there doesn't do anything for anybody. You could put 3 more of him up there on Fox News, put him on Joe Biden's staff. It wouldn't do anything for anybody who actually needed stuff done for themselves.
Yeah, it's all about the substance and what you want to fight for. And I 100% agree with that point. Well, let's end the show with the light note. And that's John Fetterman just continuing to trounce, okay? Just killing it. And Dr. Oz in a panic. So let's do it.
Thought I'd do some grocery shopping. I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables for crudité, right? So here's a broccoli. That's $2, not a ton of broccoli there. Here's some asparagus. That's $4. Yep. Carrots. That's $4 more. That's $10 of vegetables there. And then we need some guacamole. That's $4 more. And she loves salsa. Yeah, there's salsa there. $6. Must be a shortage of salsa. Guys, that's $20 for crudité. This doesn't include the tequila. I mean, that's outrageous. And we got Joe Biden to thank for this.
Thanks, Biden. Now I can't even have my vegetable plate with my tequila. Now, Dr. Oz thought that little stunt might help his campaign, but in the end, the crudité video ended up helping John Fetterman because immediately after he put that out, Fetterman went on to collect a whopping $500,000. John Fetterman's Senate campaign said it reaped a $500,000 fundraising windfall in just 24 hours after the notorious crudité video. You know, Waz, many people might not know this, but you not only love food, you're a little fancy with your food. So I'm curious, did you know what a crudité is?
I did not. I had no idea what that was. That's not something that I'm eating on a regular basis. But you know, again, I figured like it's got lots of vegetables involved, and so
it's just a veggie plate.
That's probably why I'm not familiar with it. I'm a bit of a carnivore, you know, in that way, and so that's why I'm not too familiar with that food spread.
I hear you. It could include all the ingredients that he had mentioned in that clownish video. Also, baby corn. Baby corn is part of the mix sometimes, and I'm a big fan of baby corn. You know, delicious. Don't know how much it costs
baby
these
corn.
days. Yeah. Let's go to the next graphic here because the campaign, Fetterman's campaign, has raked in $11 million in the previous fundraising quarter. Fetterman's communication director said, and $500,000 in one day is a nice bump. Okay, so that kind of puts the $500,000 in perspective. And the campaign release states that the campaign raised more than $65,000 from a sticker Fetterman offered in exchange for donations. And this is what the sticker looks like. We shared it with you yesterday. It was tweeted by Act Blue. To honor Dr. Oz's love for crudité and Wegner's, and also because it's my birthday, we're launching this new limited edition sticker. Make a donation of any amount, plus it's all yours. And it just says Wegner's, let them eat crudité, smart. The thing I appreciate about him is how savvy he is when it comes to meme culture or how to troll. Because the days of earnest politicking or campaigning, I think, at least temporarily, are over, right? The way you kind of get one up over your political opponent is by trolling them or dunking on them. And it's just, Fetterman caught on to that and does a pretty good job with it.
And I gotta say, what I'm most impressed with is the consistency of the messaging. And it's like, basically, this guy is some foofy, fancy pants dude who's parachuting in. He is nothing like you. He has nothing in common with you and does not give a damn about the things that are concerning you in your everyday life. And they're using these moments to bang that home. Like, this dude is literally doesn't know how to grocery shop. Like, he literally has no idea how to shop, right? And so that's what I'm most proud of, man, with the Fetterman campaign. And it's not something, I wasn't paying attention to his campaign. I wasn't that locked in. And in fact, Anna, you're the one who put me on to what he's been doing. And shouts to my man Mike from PA. Like, it's been really cool to watch how these guys have delivered a consistent message. And you know, it's that meat and potato stuff that we talk about, frankly, all the time when we're talking about this stuff, Anna.
1000%. And after the giant number of Americans just clowning on Oz over that video, where you're right, it's clear he doesn't know how to shop. He went on Newsmax to say, I was just joking about the crudité. Just kidding. Sure, I'm sure you're kidding about that. Anyway, maybe we'll show that video in the bonus episode for our members because we are out of time. So you can become a member by going to tyt.com/join, or if you're watching us on YouTube, just click on that join button. Members get exclusive content and they help to keep the show sustainable and corporate advertisement free, which is, in my opinion, the most important thing. Please keep doing that. Thank you for giving me a voice. We love you guys, and we'll see you soon.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing.